Hello, BookTube. I've got a bit of mail for you here and some random books and periodicals and also the Bean. Got emails from a number of you asking with varying degrees of impatience when the next time was that you were going to see the Bean in a video. Well, there she is. I moved back out here onto the fainting couch to give you a glimpse of her. Don't know what that's going to do to the video quality or the audio quality. No idea at all about the actual technical metrics of making videos here at the end of 2023. But I noticed, just from my own point of view, that this looks like wintry lighting, which kind of goes along with the day, which is actually, I had to look this up, but the old word that the old-timey people used for it was chilly. It's actually chilly today, meaning that the temperature outside is not going above freezing Fahrenheit, which is 32 degrees. I don't know when the last time was that this was true. In Massachusetts is thickly embedded. It's deep in the tropics, so that kind of weather just doesn't happen. It's really weird. And it's also overcast with the sun filtering through to what used to be called wintry light. Boston is not going to have a winter. In 2 days, it's going to be 70 degrees here, Fahrenheit. So I don't really know what explains it. These nice old-timey throwbacks are pretty fun, though. So I've got a pile of stuff that I want to show you. Books and also one periodical. The periodical is the New Yorker. And how is that for a cover? Huh? The title it's called Special Delivery, and the artist is Barry Blitt. And it's about time that UPS drivers in this country got the props they deserve. Instead of one magazine cover after another featuring Santa Claus, who doesn't do anything, instead you've got a UPS driver coming to a chimney because they do the real work. Them and the Amazon drivers are all over my neighborhood. In all weathers, every day, just working hard to get stuff where it's supposed to go. So I cheered the cover. The issue itself, well, the issue has lots and lots of things in it, but the first thing I went to, I zeroed in on it, was a piece by Peril Segal about critics. So this is a critic writing about critics. The title of the piece should have warned me as to what I was getting in for. It's called Turning the Page, which is something that even a temporary intern, temporarily given permission to title a piece in the New Yorker, should have been embarrassed to do. But no, no, instead we get just about the most derivative title imaginable. Really nice picture, really nice cartoon. I'm going to have to dig around in the credits to find out. The illustration is by Max Badinger, but it absolutely cannot be contemporary. It's good, so it can't be contemporary. I'll have to figure out where it comes from. But this is Peril Segal looking at critics writing about critics. That's the premise of the piece, anyway, that it's critics writing about critics. And she shifts right away to Wilfred Sheed's novel, Max Jameson, which I have on the shelf over there and I dearly love. I go back to it all the time. I like Wilfred Sheed's nonfiction better than his fiction, but Max Jameson is a terrific book. I've shown it to you on this channel. I've hauled it on this channel. She mentions that it's out of print. I could have sworn that wasn't true. I could have sworn there was a paperback from the New York Review of Books. But maybe that's gone out of print. Anyway, Max Jameson is about a critic. It's a novel about a critic, written by a critic. And it's wonderful. It's a wonderful novel. I am pretty convinced that Peril Segal either hasn't read it or has no idea how to see what's wonderful about it when it's right in front of her face. Instead, we get column after column of her talking about critics when they're in their off hours, when they're not being critics, and how they vapor on and maudlin, drippy, predictable, derivative prose. And then, I guess, in homage to that, she does the same thing. This is actually that rarest of rare things, a crappy piece by a terrific New Yorker writer. And naturally, it would, as luck would have it, it happens to be on a subject that I would really be interested in. I'd be interested in her A game. Here, this is not her A game. This is not any letter of the alphabet as a game. Her editor, if she has one at the New Yorker, should have said, look, I know we commissioned this, and I know you talked about it, and I know that it meets the length requirements, but I'm not going to go through this with a blue pencil. I'm handing it back. Please bear down on it. As an old editor of mine used to say, never to me, thank God, but that editor's favorite phrase was, please bear down on this. That's what's needed here. Instead, it absolutely does not get that. Absolutely not. In fact, for a piece that's supposed to be about a reflection of critics reflecting on critics, a huge amount of it is about fictional critics, first of all, which doesn't do anybody any good. And often the works that are checked are vengeful memoirs by the children of critics. I don't trust those memoirs. I don't know of a single grown adult who would trust those memoirs uncritically as to saying this really happened. No, of course not. Of course you don't take the embittered child's word for it. And in any piece like this that's referring to critics, if the writer is lazy, and in this piece, Perrault Segal is extremely lazy. She even talks about how she takes a bunch of books. She says 90-something books. Of course, it was 2. She says she takes a bunch of books and the baby, because she's got to mention that she's got a baby. She's got to do that. Whereas if a male critic writing this piece talked about how he was retiring to the bedroom and he was going to lay all these books on the bed, and he was going in there with a cup of tea and also his itchy prostate, she would be the first person in line to say, look, this isn't just a boys' club, okay? You don't need to put in the male signifiers. But she makes sure to let you know in paragraph 2 that she went to her bed with her 90 books with a baby, and that the baby fell asleep on a big fat volume of Kenneth Tynan's theater reviews, which, ironically, we've seen on this channel. She didn't do that. But even when a critic goes into the bother of doing that, you know 2 things are going to be true. If they're that lazy in a setup like this, then you know 2 things are going to be true. One is that inevitably they're going to have a window, and they're going to start fantasizing about things outside the window. The irony here is that in her piece, Segal quotes another critic who also got a make-weight, too much money for the work piece like this commission, and did the same thing 50 years ago, musing about things outside a window. How you could have so little self-awareness when you're doing the same shtick. That's one thing you know, that if the critics decided to do a lazy job of this, that's one thing you know they're going to do. And the other thing you know that they're going to do is eventually abandon the thing and just start quoting critics. Start quoting great lines from critics about other things, about movies or theater or books. I always call it the Randall Jauer reflex. Not because he ever did it. Randall Jauer never retired to his bed with his prostate or his baby and wrote lazy prose. Never. No, I call it the Randall Jauer reflex because they're always going to end up quoting him. He's one of the best, most quotable critics in the world, in the history of the world. And sure enough, she does. and the window seasons pass by. Oh, for Pete's sake. I'll keep the illustration, but the piece I would only keep as a cautionary tale. And what passes for the ultimate point that she gets to after her 90-book rumination in bed with the baby is that most critics kind of don't want to be critics. They want to be something else. Most of them are frustrated at some other kind of line of work. Now, we saw that in an N+1 think piece. The critic is unhappy. The American reader is unhappy. I did a response video about that months and months ago. And that was definitely the line of that piece. And that line is also accurate. Quite a few critics that I know merely want it to function as a stepping stone. They don't care about doing a good job for the reader. The reader is not part of the equation. Instead, they want to write a review that will catch the notice of an influential editor who will allow them to write a 4,000-word think piece on Palestinians or whatever. A think piece will have nothing to do with books. They're using this stepping stone only. It's an extremely insulting way to look at book reviewing. It's an extremely insulting way to think about the readers of book reviews, or rather to not think about them. I guess the point that she comes to at the end of this piece is that she gets the impression most critics don't really want to be critics. They want to do something else. Which reflects as poorly on her as it did on the anonymous author of that N+1 think piece, because it reveals the game. It reveals that she has her mind on other things while she's writing this. This is what's called projection. She's writing a piece about how most critics really don't want to be doing the kind of writing that they're doing. They really want to be doing something else. while writing a piece that is so lazy and so box checking that you can't help but come to the same conclusion about her. So a great opportunity wasted. A terrific critic on a subject that naturally I think is fantastic. The subject of critics. Just whiffing it. Just unfortunately. So that was the main effect of the New Yorker this time around for me was negative, of course, because I was going to pay attention to that more than anything else. But then we'll look at the books. Now, the first 3 books I grabbed from a little free library, which is insane. I have books coming in the mail all the time here. I have books that I get at my used bookstore, and I've got a million electronic books. There's no reason for me ever to take anything out of a little free library. But the other day, the Bean and I were out for a long walk, and we came across 2 little free libraries. And by the time I was back here, I had 3 books. And I wanted to show them to you. They don't make any sense. They will probably end up going back to the little free libraries from whence they came. Oh, do you want to get down here, baby? You can give them free to yoga. They haven't had that in a long time. Huh? How's the baby? Huh? Whenever you're ready, Frida Bean. Oh, look at the baby. Oh. Good baby. You want to come down here? Give them some Frida yoga? Oh. Stretch. There you go, baby. Oh. Well, we haven't had that in a while. So the first of the 3 books that we got at the Little Free Library was by Elodie Harper, and I loved the book, but I have it as an ebook. I don't need the print copy. I got the paperback copy of The Wolf Den. I heard about this book for the first time. This was a BookTube made me do it. I heard about this book for the first time from BookTube, from the BookTube channel of the Brothers Gwynn. They went on and on about, this is the first volume in a trilogy, and they went on and on about it. It's set in a whorehouse in Vesuvius, in the immediate run-up to the eruption of the volcano. And it's the story of the women working in that whorehouse called the Wolf Den. And it's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. An opinion that I had when I read the book in ebook copy. I have it. I don't need another copy, but I've never seen it. I don't have a retail bookstore anymore that I go to, so I grabbed it. I will put it back. I will put it back. And then this next one I got as a UK trade paperback. I have a deep sweet spot for UK trade paperbacks, to the extent that, as I have noted over the years, I will often get a UK trade paperback of a book or an author that I don't particularly like because it's in that format, which is crazy. And that happened this time around. I found The Unfolding by A.M. Holmes, who's an author I don't like. I know that A.M. Holmes has a huge amount of praise, but none of these books have ever worked for me. And this one didn't work for me. But I found it in this UK trade paperback, and I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to give it another try and see what I make of it. And then there's the third one, which did work for me, but I considered it a little bit make-weight, a little bit of an easy book. So I got it. We might have seen it on this channel. I got it and then read it and then gave my feedback in a couple of crucial quarters and then got rid of it. And then I found it again in this little free library, and I think I would have passed on it if not for the fact that whoever was the original owner did what I always do and cut out pertinent book reviews and tucked them inside the book. And for some reason, that created a bond of brotherhood and made me think I should try this again, even though that brotherhood is an illusion because whoever went to the bother of doing that then gave the book up. This is by Russell Shorto, and it's called Island at the Center of the World. And you see they added in the book reviews there from the New York Times Book Review and the New York Review of Books. This is a story of the Dutch settlement of Manhattan, which has had a couple of books on the subject. I remember this being very good, companionable, but it didn't, in my memory, it didn't dig very deep. In my memory, the prose was not all that good, just serviceable. So I didn't keep it. And so, again, I have no excuse for why I took it out of a little free library. But I did, and I will give it a reread. I'm only, today is the 7th? I am just 14 or 15 days away from shifting entirely to rereading. Just 100% rereading. So this is a perfect candidate. All three of these are perfect candidates. I'll keep them at least that long, But I have a tote bag right there on the doorknob of the door that the Bean and I use to go on our little perambulations. And that tote bag is 4 books going out to little free libraries. So if I know that we're taking a route, it's always tricky because if we get, out to the outside world, we get to the sidewalk or whatnot, and we're walking along and we've sort of decided on a route, and Frida decides she wants to do something else, a route that doesn't have a little free library, then I'm stuck carrying these things because I'm not going to let my plans interfere with her walk. But it usually works out. Usually it does. So these will go back in that bag. Then we have newer books that were opened off camera. So I'll show you some of those. One is by, obviously, a topical thing. This is for late February. This is by Nasser Abu Sraur, and it's called The Tale of a Wall. And I don't have any paperwork for this thing. No, I don't. So we'll just read the back of it here. One of more than 5,000 Palestinians currently held in Israeli prisons, the author serves a life sentence with no possibility of parole. From the Nakba to the disastrous consequences of the Oslo Accords, he explains with great acumen how the Intifada of the Stones, from 1987 to 1993, ultimately provided the only option for young Palestinians in refugee camps to infuse meaning into their lives, especially as they faced a constant threat of humiliation and manipulation by Israeli intelligence. This uprising leads the author's incarceration after he is forced to confess under torture to involvement in the killing of an officer who recruited his cousin as an informant. Within his cell, he turns the wall that has deprived him of his freedom into his interlocutor and source of stability that allows him to survive a chaotic, hopeless existence. This incredible literary device, the survival strategy, becomes particularly heartbreaking when falling in love causes him to lose his grip on the wall. Only by writing the story of his imprisonment and the story of his love does he find his way back. So I don't know if is he still in prison? While incarcerated, he completed the final semester of a bachelor's degree in English from Bethlehem University and obtained a master's degree in political science from Al-Quds University. And this is his first book to appear in English. So he might still be in prison. So that comes out in February. I honestly, my imagination shudders to think what the state of things will be like in Israel in February. I shudder to think of that. Here, let's get the feng shui going here. Because that story, of course, is unfolding in the news every day. And to the extent that most Western viewers have gotten inured to it. They don't even pay. It's just an ongoing thing, an ongoing story in the background, which boggles my mind. That just boggles my mind. I guess it confirms something that was really confirmed for me after the armed insurrection to overthrow the government of my country on January 6th, which is that the American public will get used to anything. Unfortunately for us and for the rest of the world, that also means fascist dictatorship. The American public will get used to anything. And I guess the American reading public is accustomed now to the fact that one of the most advanced militaries in the world is spending every day, all day, massacring thousands and thousands and thousands of innocent civilians. Babies, children, old people, hospital patients. Thousands and thousands and thousands of them every day. So God knows what that story will look like in late February. I have no idea. I don't think anyone now can look at what's going on in Gaza as anything more than an elaborate land grab. And one of the most grotesque land grabs in modern history. I don't see how you can look at it any other way. It's not like, first of all, there's no infrastructure left, no drinking water, no aquifers, the latest horrifying story, no buildings, no universities, no roads. The Palestinian people, obviously, even if they were invited back into that territory, they don't have the resources to rebuild. Israel has the resources to rebuild. Do you think they're going to rebuild that for the Palestinians? No, they're not going to rebuild that for the Palestinians. It's looking more and more, worse and worse every day. God only knows what will have happened by February. Anyway, I'm not going to read this in 2023, but it's coming up. And then, let's see here. We have a March book. This is by Rita Bullwinkle. and it's called Headshot. So, again, I don't have a sheet for this. We'll just read from the back here. This comes out in mid-March in hardcover. And it also is a debut. The Tale of the Wall is the author's English language debut. This is also an English language debut, but the author has no other works. This is just a debut here. Let's see here. An unexpected tragedy at a community pool. A family's unrelenting expectation of victory. The desire to gain or lose control. To make time speed up or stop. To be frighteningly, undeniably good at something. Each of the 8 teenage girl boxers in this blistering debut novel has her own reasons for the sacrifices she has made to come to Reno, Nevada to compete to be named the best in the country. Through a series of face-offs that are raw, ecstatic, and punctuated by flashes of humor and tenderness, prize-winning writer Rita Bullwinkle animates the competitors' past and futures as they summon the emotion, imagination, and force of will required to win. Okay, so are there 8 characters who all know each other? Is there a forward momentum here to a narrative? Or is it 8 short stories? If it's 8 short stories, it's not a novel. Okay? If it's 8 short stories, of unconnected characters who never meet each other except when they're pounding each other's brains in, it's not a novel. It's a collection of short stories. There's nothing wrong with calling it your debut collection of short stories. We're all still proud of you. No matter what your name is. Obviously, this is a collection of short stories about boxing. What's the first fictional word that comes to mind when you think about boxing? Rocky. If you're an American, what comes up with Rocky? Bullwinkle. So I know in no way whatsoever believe that this author's last name is Bullwinkle, but do we dare to read the biography? This is all about girl bosses who don't need no man, who are the key to everything. So I don't know how any of them are ever going to lose. They're in fights against each other. Surely half of them have to lose, but that's not allowed. The author wrote a short story collection called Belly Up. So this is a debut novel. Contemporary authors love to get more than one bite at the apple. They love to be, mostly a virgin on their wedding night. So she's had a debut already. She's had a debut short story collection already. This sure as hell sounds like a short story collection, which you can't have twice. You can't have 2 debuts. Although I guess in a world where 2 + 2 = 4 can be called white supremacist, maybe you can have 2 debut novels. So she was the recipient of the 2022 Whiting Award, and her work has been published in Tin House, Bomb Magazine, Guernica, and elsewhere. She is an editor-at-large for McSweeney's and deputy editor of The Believer. And she's an assistant professor of English at the University of San Francisco. Okay, well, this comes out in March. Headshots. Oh, girl boxing. Then we have, what is this next one? All right, this one does have a sheet. So let's grasp at straws here and see what we have here. Okay, this comes out in late February. And it's called Waiting for Al Gore. It's a novel by Bob Katz. A little house sparrow, my beloved house sparrows, on a pair of sneakers there. Lenny Beeble, wannabe journalist, travels to an international environmental conference in rural Vermont. Is there any other kind of Vermont? In search of a good story, and boy, does he need one. There he meets Rachel Seagrave, Earth Care's visionary founder. Rachel and her team of bumbling colleagues still cling to the hope that Nobel winner Al Gore will appear to inspire the faithful with the keynote address, but time is running short. Waiting in the wings is self-help guru Henry okay, his name is Henry Marks, but he has patented the middle name of Onyor Marks, a slick purveyor of jog-think. Henry's shtick is popular with business and sales conventions, but how it pertains to the environmental crisis is a mystery. Henry is not one to give up easily, and he's determined to prove himself worthy. But what's up? What's that up in the sky? An endangered species of bird, thought to be extinct, is sighted flitting around where the conference will be held. With a mad stampede of birders, a missing ex-vice president, and a keynote speaker who may or may not be a fraud, Babel's just got his story. It's just not the story anyone planned on. Okay. All right. I'm naturally wondering, here if Al Gore does make an appearance in this book at the end. And I guess that's the whole point of the copy, is that I'm supposed to wonder that. Be sure it would be nice if Al Gore would make an appearance in Democratic politics. It would be wonderful. He's hale and healthy. He's a hell of a public speaker. But let's see here. So do I want to read this guy's biography? He is the author of several books, including Third and Long and the novel Hot Air, about a mystical South American revolutionary on a speaking tour of U.S. campuses. And his journalism has appeared in the New York Times, Los Angeles Times, Boston Globe, Chicago Tribune, Newsweek, Mother Jones, Newsday, Slate, Spy, and many other outlets. All right, well, this comes out next year. So, Waiting for Al Gore, from a smaller publisher. Yes, Flexible Press. So I don't know that you would see this in your bookstore. So if it sounds good to you, pre-order it. For Pete's sake, let's help indie authors. Then we have this certainly is not a small thing. This will be in your bookstores. This is from Basic Books. This comes out in February and continues an unbelievable run that Basic Books has been having. Just unbelievable, of nonfiction. Just one work of really interesting or meaty history or biography after another, in a string that apparently is going to continue into the new year. This is by Nathan Pearl Rosenthal, and it's called The Age of Revolutions and the Generations Who Made It. So big, thick book on revolutions. The revolutions that raged across Europe and the Americas over 7 decades shattered empires, toppled social hierarchies, and birthed a world of republics. But old injustices lingered, creating new and insidious forms of inequality. In The Age of Revolutions, historian Nathan Pearl Rosenthal offers the first narrative history of this entire... offers the first narrative history of this entire era. Okay. You gotta love publicity writers. You just gotta love them. Okay. All right. Okay. I don't mean to bash anyone here. It's entirely possible that this is not the first history of the wave of revolutions that struck the world at this time. It's entirely possible that is not the case. It's entirely possible that there was one last year and 2 the year before that. But let's just press on here. Through a kaleidoscope of lives, both familiar and unknown, from John Adams to Saint Louverture, to Napoleon, an ambitious French naturalist and a seditious Peruvian nun, he retells the revolutionary epic as a generational story. The first revolutionary generation struggled to slip the hierarchical bonds of the old order. Their failures molded a second generation, more adept at mass organizing, but with an illiberal tint. Now that is good. That is very good. Okay, so maybe the main gist of this book will not be reinventing the wheel. The sweeping political transformations they accomplished after 1800 ingrained forms of inequality and racial hierarchy that remain with us today. Did it do anything else? Did those political transformations that they did after 1800, did they do anything else? They ingrained forms of inequality and racial hierarchy that remain with us today. Did they do anything else? Did they maybe do any good things at all? No? No, those ingrained forms of inequality and racial hierarchy are with us today. It's just a terrible shame. But you American readers out there reading this right in the trenches along with me, we can look forward to the day. It won't be tomorrow, my friends. It won't even be in 50 years, but maybe in 100 years when we finally overcome these ingrained forms of racial hierarchy that remain with us today. Maybe in 100 years we'll have a black president. I know. It seems amazing to me. I'm sure it does to you as well. We can't look for it anytime soon, but someday, I tell you, the day will come when we will have incredibly powerful black congresswomen, where one of the most powerful tastemakers of the last 30 years in pop culture will be a black woman, and where, I know it seems crazy, we might even have a black president. We can dream. I might not reach that promised land with you, my friends, but we can dream. A breathtaking history spanning 3 continents, The Age of Revolutions uncovers how the period's grand political transformations emerged across the oceans and slowly, unevenly, over generations. Well, the generational aspect is good. That's interesting. That there were actually 2 generations of these people, and the first generation failed, and the second generation learned from the first how better to revolt. That's fascinating. I'll be very interested to see what this author does with that. But I won't be anytime soon because this comes out in February. Then we have a finished copy. I still think this is next year, though. Oh, no, I think this is late this year. Nope, this is next year. This comes out in early January. This is the finished copy of Bonnie Jo Campbell, who'll be an author a lot of you will know and like, The Waters. Lovely embossed thing there. This is a lyrical and propulsive new work by the celebrated queen of rural noir. Finalist for the National Book Award and the National Book Critics Circle Award, Bonnie Jo Campbell has an unparalleled gift for capturing the essence of the lush and haunting landscape of the rural Midwest. Her latest novel is an evocative portrait of one young girl's coming of age in the wilds of the great Masaga Swamp. Local healer Hermie herself, Zook. Okay. All right. Her first name is Hermine, Hermine, and her last name is Zook, Zook. Has already raised 3 daughters when her youngest, the beautiful and elusive Rose Thorn, returns to the island with her newborn daughter swaddled in a backpack. And the daughter is called 4th of July Fireworks. No, that part's not true. Maybe it is. The daughter's not named in the pub sheet. I just gave her that name. Because, you know, I can't count the number of times just in the last month when I've met people called 4th of July Fireworks. So maybe that is the daughter of Rose Thorn. She soon disappears again, leaving her daughter... Oh, wait. We do get the daughter's name. The daughter's name is Dorothy, but she's not known as Dorothy. She's known as Donkey. To grow up with her eccentric granny on the island. The girl keeps an eye on the world around her. This is Donkey. Keeps an eye on the world around her while poring over math and science books sent by her aunt. Ziggy Starlight is her aunt. Actually not. Doesn't say so, but we're getting to the aunt's name. It can't be any better. Ziggy Starlight. We'll call her Aunt Ziggy Starlight. Desperate to see through the unpredictable chaos of life to the infinite truths beyond. The Zook women and the island itself have a tenacious hold on the imagination and passions of the early people of White Heart, Michigan, even as the community favors development of the wetlands to which the women are inextricably bound. The mysteries at the heart of the lives of the Zook women, their loves and losses and individual gifts, unfold against the backdrop of ancient black willows, quick mud, gunshots, and the murmur of rattlesnakes on the tiny island of stone's throw from the simmering tensions on the mainland. Okay. Fantastic. Well, I have never read anything by this author that I didn't like, so I imagine that I will certainly give this one a try if I return in the new year. But you now know one way or another whether I do or not. You now know. And let's get this so that the pub date for Ziggy Starlight is nice and visible. Let's see here. Let's hold this origami style. There we go. All right. So this comes out in early January. And any of you right now who are poised over the keyboard, tempted to leave a comment telling me that that half of your friends when you're growing up were called Donkey, kindly don't. So those are the free and open books, but we'll do a little mail as well. I managed to remember not to open everything off camera, so let's look at a little mail. See what's coming here. I mean, if you're bored writing fiction, then teach. Okay? If you're bored writing fiction, then teach. But don't call your little character, Tin Man on the Yellow Brick Road and pretend that we're just supposed to say, oh, okay, Tin Man, how you doing, Tin Man? No, my name is Tin Man on the Yellow Brick Road. You're supposed to say all of it. But anyway, okay. All right, this first one this is all going to be next year, I'm sure. This is February. This is by Sarah Tomlinson, and it's called The Last Days of the Midnight Ramblers. Hell of a cover. Don't have a sheet for this, so we'll just read this here. It's a novel. Anke Bourbon, A-N-K-E. Sensing a trend here. Okay. Anke Bourbon is ready to tell all. A legendary model and style icon, she revealed in headline-grabbing romances with not one. She reveled in headline-grabbing romances with not one, but 3 members of the hugely influential rock band, the Midnight Ramblers. So Daisy and the Six, even the color scheme is meant to sort of... the band members were as famous for their backstage drama as for their music. And Ankle is the only one who fully understands the tangled relationships, betrayals, and suspicions that have added to the Rambler's enduring appeal and mystique. That is most evident in the mystery around Ankle's role in the death of Mal, the band's founder and Ankle's husband, in 1969. When ghostwriter Mary Hawthorne accepts, M-A-R-I, it's not Mary, it's Mary, and her last name is Hawthorne accepts. Not two words, just one. Okay. When the ghostwriter... Oh no. Okay, it's a typo. Okay, the author's name is Hawthorne. It's just a typo. Accepts the job to work with Ankle on her memoir. She is set on getting to the truth of Malady's death. She has always been deft at navigating the fatal charms of celebrities, having grown up with a narcissistic alcoholic father. As she ingratiates herself into the world of the band, she grows enchanted against her better judgment by these legendary rock stars. She knows she can't get pulled in too deep. She'll compromise her objectivity and her integrity. Okay, well, that, aside from the ridiculous names, that does sound really good. Not just the privileged position of Ankle, but also the fact that the story is being filtered through an outsider who is being pulled in. That's always a good gimmick, because you also are an outsider being pulled into this narrative. So, filled with all the glamour and attitude of rock and roll. Is that really what rock and roll has? The Last Days of the Midnight Ramblers is a big-hearted page-turner that will appeal to fans of Daisy Jones and the Six, and also Almost Famous. Okay. So, rock and roll fiction, those of you who like Daisy Jones and the Six, and maybe want something to scratch that same itch, you've got something coming out in February, so that's good. Let's see what this next one is. These are all going to be... Hi, baby. What you doing? You've forgotten what it's like for mail to be opened, haven't you? These are all going to be next year. I doubt very much otherwise. Okay, this next one, it comes out in February, so February is looking to be a booming month. This is called by Aaron Young, and it's called Original Sins. And with that big, ugly block type that is now absolutely required for thrillers, you will find me. I will find you. Big block letters, ugly, just plastered across the front of the book. Let's see here. So this is a thriller, perfect for fans of Tana French. It's a brutal winter in Des Moines, Iowa. Okay. Well, 2 thumbs up to Des Moines, Iowa, of course, but the idea of a brutal winter in Des Moines, Iowa, in 2 or 3 days on one side or the other of Christmas Day, 2023, so in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 or 3 days on either side of that. So either the 20th to the 23rd or the 27th to the 30th. One of those 2 stretches of time in Des Moines, Iowa, the temperature is going to reach 80 degrees Fahrenheit. So maybe this is set way in the past. And the city is gripped by fear. A serial attacker known as the Sin Eater is stalking women and has just struck again. It's a tough time and a tough place for Riley Fisher, a former small-town sergeant, to be reporting for duty as an FBI agent on her first assignment. Teamed with a man she's not sure she can trust and struggling to prove herself, while fighting to the pull of her old life and family dramas, Riley is tasked with investigating a vicious death threat against the newly elected female state governor. Gradually, she traces a disturbing connection between this case and the hunt for the Sin Eater. Well, but the Sin Eater hunt can't be all that urgent, because we're specifically told that it's a serial attacker. Unless academia has decided that there is a blue checkmark, progressive stack, woke reason not to say serial killer. And that the Sin Eater actually is a serial killer, but you can't say that anymore. Is that the latest thing? Is that unhoused person? I don't know. I don't have any idea. If he's a serial attacker, for all we know, he's throwing pies in people's faces. Is he a serial killer or not? Let's see here. Erin Young follows up her acclaimed crime debut, The Fields. Oh, I knew that name, and I liked The Fields. Oh, fantastic. Which has drawn comparisons with The Mayor of Easttown, Silence of the Lambs, and True Detective, with another stunning thriller full of dark menace, surprise, and suspense. Okay, well, a lot of you will remember The Fields. A lot of you had it on reserve from your library, or a lot of you had it for your book clubs. This is the follow-up book by that author. Okay, great. So hence the Midwestern setting. Great, fantastic. So we have a plucky agent with a murky past tracking down a serial attacker. All right, let's move on to this next one. This is, oh my God, another February. Good Lord. Good Lord. All right, my February shelf is now enormous. Let's get all this stuff out of the way. I do not need your mother's recipe for bouillabaisse. I know how to interview an author. I don't need you to tell me how to do that. So this comes out in February. This is another thriller, as you can tell. I wouldn't need to say a word about it. You'd still be able to tell because it's got these big, dumb block letters plastered across the cover. This is by Iris Yamashita, and it's called Village in the Dark. The sooner this fad goes away, the better I'll like it. Last winter, Academy Award-nominated screenwriter Iris Yamashita caused an avalanche with readers and reviewers with her debut mystery novel City Under One Roof, which we saw on this channel and which was excellent, garnering a hat trick of pre-publication starred reviews and an indie next list selection. And the hat trick being referred to there is the industry pre-publication review journals. Library Journal, Publishers Weekly, and Kirkus. All other review organs, commercial review organs for papers and magazines and whatnot, are kind of bound by a gentleman's agreement not to run the review far in advance of the appearance of the book. You get a copy far in advance, but that's only to make sure that your reviewer can read it in time. But the industry journals, the trade journals, they run a review as soon as they can, long before the book comes to its pub date. And that's because they are used by libraries and schools all over the country for their ordering purposes. And the reviews aren't signed, so you don't have any axe to grind against any kind of reviewer. Instead, it's the journal reviewing these things on a very limited basis. Those reviews are usually not more than 300 words. And they're very programmatic. You get a summary of the book and then a dispassionate, quick assessment of the book. And the star reviews are totally the decision of the reviewers. They aren't told by their editors at Publishers Weekly. You're not told we need 4-star reviews from you a month. No. A reviewer can go their whole tenure at Library Journal without giving a star review to anybody, if they want to. It has to strike them as truly excellent. So to get a hat trick of starred reviews is no small thing. That is genuinely worth mentioning in your pub sheet. The novel dropped readers into the isolated snowy town of Point Metier, Alaska, inspired but not wholly based on the real-life Whittier, Alaska, where all 205 residents live in the same high-rise building, and introduced them to intrepid Anchorage-based detective Kara Kennedy. It was the ultimate locked-room mystery, and readers were hooked. Now, in Village in the Dark, more is revealed about Kara Kennedy, the residents of Point Metier, and another isolated town. Kara Kennedy has the bodies of her husband and son, who have disappeared on a hike a year ago, their bones eventually found buried, exhumed. Shocking clues have emerged that foul play was involved, potentially connecting them with a string of other deaths and disappearances. Tied to the mystery is Mia Upash, who grew up in the isolated village called Unity, a community of women and children in hiding from abusive men. Mia never imagined the trouble she would find herself in when she left home to live in man's world. Those of you who aren't comic book fans, for 70 years, that was the term for the outside world that was given by the women of Wonder Woman's home, Paradise Island. Although she remains haunted by the tragedy of what happened to the man and boy in the woods, she has her own reasons for keeping quiet. Kara's investigation will lead herself and the residents of Point Metier on a dangerous path that puts their lives and the lives of everyone around them in mortal jeopardy. So this is a sequel to City Under One Roof. Fantastic. Okay, so this comes out in February. Great. Glad the author popped one out right away. That's wonderful. So those of you who really liked City Under One Roof, or maybe you didn't read City Under One Roof, get on the list at your library. There might not be a list. I think you'll really like it. I really think you will. So it'll all, I mean, that doesn't say anything about this book. The author could have phoned this in or fobbed it off to a relative or whatever. But it means a lot of credit in the Bank of Steve, so you might like it too. And then we'll do our final package here. I realize this video has gone very long. Good Lord. I've got a pile of books. That was probably unrealistic of me. We'll do this last one, and then we'll be done. Okay. It just tells me that I have a book in my hand. I already know that. Let's see here. All right, this one comes out in April. Okay, this is called Revolutie, Indonesia and the Birth of the Modern World by David van Rijbroek. Revolutie. Very interesting looking. Okay, well, I don't have a sheet for this, but it's bound to have something in it somewhere. Here we go. In the wake of World War II, Indonesia was the first country to rid itself of colonial rule. The Revolutie, as it was known, precipitated the end of the colonial era and inspired independence movements all over the world. In this epic history, renowned scholar and celebrated author of Congo, David van Rijbroek, vividly captures a period of extraordinary tumult and chaos to tell the story of Indonesia's violent and momentous revolution. Encompassing several hundred years of history, he details the formation of the Dutch East Indies, the Japanese invasion that followed, and the young rebels who engaged in armed resistance once the occupation ended. British, Australian, and Dutch troops were sent to restore order and keep peace, but instead ignited the first modern war of decolonization. Written with extraordinary clarity and drama and based on hundreds of interviews and eyewitness testimonies, this book is a masterful history that reframes our understanding of post-colonialism. Let's hope it doesn't do that last thing. Let's hope it just tells its story instead of preaching. But it does sound very interesting. I don't think I've read a whole book on the subject, so... All right, there we go. We got to the end. All next year releases. So Revolutie. We have Village in the Dark, a sequel to a very promising previous novel. We have Original Sins, also a sequel to a very promising previous novel. We have The Last Days of the Midnight Ramblers, for you fans of Daisy Jones and the Six. We have The Waters, about the Zouk women living in the marsh, living in the Blackwater swamps. We have The Age of Revolutions. I wonder if Indonesia will be in there. We have Waiting for Al Gore. Will he or won't he show up when an endangered bird shows up? We have Headshot, a debut, whatever it is, a debut work of some kind or other about female boxers, and The Tale of the Wall by an incarcerated Palestinian who falls in love with the wall of his prison. And narrates his story to the wall of his prison until real love intervenes. I mean, people are getting that book. Editors are getting that book all over the country, and all of them are thinking, they're having the same thought that I did, which is around the time when you would be commissioning a review of this thing. But how on earth? Obviously, if you're going to do that, you're going to do it because it's topical. You're not going to do it for any other reason. You're going to do it because it's topical. But its topicality is a moving target. You don't know how topical it's going to be when the time comes. That's awful tricky. As an assignment from an editor, that's awful tricky. Fortunately, there are plenty of people out there reviewing books who aren't book section editors. They don't have to think 2 months ahead of time. They can just wait and do the review. There are book bloggers, book reviewers who are on YouTube and elsewhere they'll be getting copies of this as well, I'm sure. But anyway, those are all of the new and forthcoming books, and then a little pile of little free library books that I will dabble with, but I will certainly return. I will not be keeping them. So there you go, a big bookish video that just sort of wandered all over the map. I'll wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.